The violent personality would push out one of the child personalities, and if they're having marital relations, you could imagine the challenge that creates. And then she couldn't drive a car because the child personality, if it came out, wouldn't know how to operate a motor vehicle. Before we dive in, it's important to remember that the information we provide is for informational purposes only. Every situation is unique, and decisions regarding your health or legal matters should be made after consulting with your own doctor or lawyer. Our aim is to inform and empower, but personal circumstances require personalized advice. Hi, welcome to another edition of Justice in Scrubs. I'm Attorney Richard Hastings, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Dr. Jeff Michaelis.
And today we have a fascinating guest on the program. Why don't you do the introduction?
Yes, actually, our guest is Attorney Richard Hastings.
Oh, my God. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
So let's talk about how wonderful you are.
So we thought it would be interesting to talk about interesting, unusual, fascinating personal injury cases that I have had over my 40-plus year and continuing career.
Why don't you first talk about your career? How did it start?
Sure. So I grew up in Richfield, Connecticut. I'm the oldest of 5 boys, and being in a household of boys, we would fight all the time. And one of the things that I did not like was injustice and bullying and people trying to take advantage of other people. And I was drawn to a career in the law. And the reason that I love practicing personal injury law is because I'm able to help people take care of problems that are very significant and that they cannot handle themselves. The other thing is I love fighting against insurance companies and defense lawyers because many times they will take positions that are extreme or unreasonable, or they're just looking to not do the right thing. And that's something that really gets me going. So growing up in Richfield, graduating from Richfield High School, I graduated from the University of Connecticut undergraduate with a degree in business. And then I went on to Fordham University, which is in New York City, and became a lawyer and started practicing in Richfield.
Okay, also, I know that you have some other accomplishments, not only in the law. Can you talk about your books and your self-help?
Sure. So I'm incredibly entrepreneurial, and I've written, I think, 24, 25, 26 books. I've written probably 6 books using AI. I wrote a book with a former insurance adjuster called Adjuster Secrets, Attorney and Adjuster Tips and Techniques that guarantee larger settlements. We marketed that to personal injury lawyers across the country, and we sold that as an ebook only. You couldn't buy a hardcover or softcover copy of the book, and we sold that book online for as much as $799.99. I also teach lawyers across the country how to get more money for their clients' personal injury cases. I have a patent pending system on how to develop personal injury cases and how to maximize the amount of money that a lawyer can get for their client's injury case.
So are these books mainly geared to lawyers, or are there any books for your clients?
So they're books they're basically 3 markets. One book is for clients. They tell clients what to do, what not to do, how to get better medical care, how to get better quicker, how to get, develop their lost wage claim, how to get more money for their pain, how to get more money for their suffering, and walks them through the process of what they need to do. Another subset of those books are for lawyers that teach lawyers how to get more money for their clients' personal injury cases, what to do, what not to do, and the strategies that they can use. And the other subset of books they deal with subjects involving business, developing business, marketing business. And I also have books that deal with motivational techniques and how you can accomplish any goal that you want to accomplish in the next 12 months, guaranteed.
If I'm a client or person and I have an injury, how do I decide what lawyer to go to?
So most people would talk to a friend of theirs or a family member or a trusted advisor and say, what lawyer should I use? And many times what will happen is, they'll say, oh, call my lawyer, who might be a real estate lawyer, and then might dabble in personal injury cases, or call my, family lawyer or my estate and trust lawyer, or somebody might just say, oh, I used this lawyer in my accident case, give that person a call. Many people don't do the necessary research to find out, is this a person that only practices personal injury law, that has a lot of experience in personal injury law, that has perhaps written books or given lectures or is highly rated, because there are a number of different rating services that, for example, Martindale-Hubbell, which I think is over 150 years old, that rates lawyers AV, BV, CV. And if you're an AV-rated lawyer, which I am, that means that you're in the top 5% of all lawyers in the country. Super lawyers is another group that rates lawyers. The same thing, if you're a super lawyer, then, which I am, then you're in the top 5% of all lawyers. So there are a number of different ways that you can go about researching lawyers before using one of the lawyers.
You said there's a super lawyer, and what was the other one?
Super lawyers, the other is Martindale-Hubbell.
Martindale-Hubbell?
Which I think is now called Martindale.
And you think those are very applicable and helpful rating surfaces?
Well, there are ways that you can research whether or not a lawyer who is, in Martindale, it's judges and your peers, other lawyers rate you.
Oh, okay. Now, to do a personal injury case requires a lot of background and knowledge and research, right? So maybe regular lawyers don't have the knowledge for that. Is that correct? Is there a distinction between a personal injury lawyer's skill set versus a regular lawyer or a different kind of lawyer?
Yes, there is. And you would not, in my opinion, want somebody who does real estate and estate and trust work and corporate work and DUI and criminal and personal injury, because you want somebody who's doing exclusively personal injury law, because that way they're in it all the time. They're dealing with adjusters all the time. They have a lot more experience in perhaps dealing in the particular type of case that you have.
And they also are able to research the medical issues too, probably, right?
Well, there are lots and lots of things they can do, but if you have somebody who only practices personal injury law, in my opinion, I think you're much better off.
Okay, you want to talk about some interesting cases that you've seen over the years?
Sure. So we've handled a lot of different types of cases, and the interesting thing is that you're never surprised about the type of case that you get. And probably the most fascinating individual that I ever met was a woman who came into my office along with her husband. She was interested in investigating a potential medical malpractice case against her therapist, her mental health therapist. Okay. The woman had multiple personality disorder.
Really?
And generally speaking, in order to have multiple personality disorder, generally they are female. Generally they are in the Western world, not in the Eastern world. And generally they have had some very traumatic event in their past which creates this multiple personality disorder. Generally a rape or an incestuous relationship or something incredibly traumatic. And this woman had probably 3 male personalities, maybe 5 female personalities, and maybe 3 child personalities. And after so in order to cure a multiple personality patient, I am told, the psychiatrist or psychologist has to integrate the personalities, which means that they're basically killing all but one personality. And because the person that has multiple personality is so intelligent, which is why they have fractured these personalities, all of the personalities know what the psychiatrist is trying to do. So one of the things that I'm told you need to do in that situation is you need to do things on a regular basis. So if you have an appointment at 2 o'clock on 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, you have to have that every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. You don't want to change things around because it's important to have, some type of stability in the treatment. So this psychiatrist was changing things all around, and it got to the point where this individual went into the office. The very violent personality had hidden a knife in her pocket. She goes into the doctor's office, pulls out the knife, and stabs herself in the stomach. So I listened to this situation, but told her that this was something that I could not assist her with. And then I was just curious and asked her if I could ask her a number of different questions. And I said, having multiple personality disorder, what's the most difficult part of your day? And she told me it was deciding what to wear in the morning. and there was a violent personality. And if the couple, the husband and wife, got into a fight, sometimes the violent personality would push out one of the child personalities. And if they're having marital relations, you could imagine the challenge that creates. And then she couldn't drive a car because the child personality, if it came out, wouldn't know how to operate a motor vehicle. And I just found that person to be absolutely fascinating and so sad in that how this all came about, because there was a very violent and traumatic chain of events that led to this particular type of situation.
Wow. So she ended up going to another lawyer, or you're not sure?
I don't know what happened with her after that, but I just remember thinking, wow.
Yeah, I worked in medical field for over 30 years, and I never, ever saw someone with multiple personalities, not even in my training. So it's very, very rare, but it's fascinating.
And, you read about or see, I think the movie was Sybil, where,
right.
There was a movie about somebody with the multiple personality disorder. But you hear about these things, and to actually meet somebody that's going through this horrific psychological, you want to talk about turmoil. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Well, like you said, it usually starts from a terrible, terrible incident.
Right.
Where you're suppressing a bunch of stuff and yeah. So is there any other cases that you want to talk about?
Sure. So there are a lot of different cases. One of them, a very, very difficult liability case, is I was approached by a gentleman who went to a racetrack. And he was going to race his motorcycle, and it's one of those straight racetracks. And before you race, you, of course, sign a waiver. If anything happens to you, you can't hold the track liable. And the interesting thing is that you cannot contract away your own negligence. So, for example, if you go to the amusement park and you buy a ticket, and on the ticket it says you waive your right to claim, any type of injuries, or you waive your right to claim any type of case of damages against the amusement park, that doesn't hold true in every situation, because if the Ferris wheel falls apart, if the roller coaster falls down, you can go after the facility because of the fact that they were negligent and they didn't do anything to protect you, or didn't do the proper things to protect you, so you could go after them. So we have a client who is at a motorcycle racetrack. He's waiting to take off at the line. And when you race these very, very large motorcycles, you have what's called a bleach box, where you put the back tire in bleach, and then you gun it as you hold onto the brake. And what it does is the tire spins, the tire gets very, very hot and sticky, and then the smoke comes up, and you see that. So he's waiting on the starting line for you see the Christmas trees, so the light goes red, 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 and all of a sudden it goes green, and when it goes green, then you take off. So as he's waiting to take off at the starting line, the guy behind him, who is not properly licensed, was not properly checked in, and has a bike that's too big for his abilities, is in the burnout box, comes flying out of the box and hits him from behind and significantly injures him. We had a claim against the track. They right away said, oh, no, there's a waiver here. You waived your rights. The answer was baloney. And we ended up getting a significant amount of money for him as a result of this negligence on the part of the racetrack.
Well, that's really interesting. So even a waiver, if they screw up on their end, you can trump the waiver.
In many situations, yes. So it's important, if you're injured, one of the messages I want to leave with people that are listening is, if you're injured, it's important to contact a personal injury lawyer. So the question people have is, do I need to hire a personal injury lawyer? And the answer is, if you had a rotting or decaying tooth in your mouth, you could probably remove that tooth on your own. It's not a particularly good idea to do that, but you could do it. And the same thing is true with your personal injury case. You could probably represent yourself in your own personal injury case, but if you have a significant case, that's not a good idea either, because you don't know the value of your case, you don't know how to negotiate your case. You're going to be relying upon the insurance adjuster who is working for the insurance company who wants to pay you the least amount of money possible to help guide you through this process. And they're only looking to take advantage of you and pay you pennies on the dollar.
Also, if you're not sure that you have a case, you can contact a personal injury lawyer that works on contingency. So it won't cost you anything if the personal injury lawyer says this is not a case. Is that correct?
Yes. And the thing that I find fascinating is that, I mean, obviously in doing personal injury law, you know that, but for the number of people that don't know that, it's really quite interesting for me. And that is, you can have no money. You could have just filed for bankruptcy. And if you're involved in an accident, you can hire one of the best personal injury lawyers and not have to come up with 10 cents out of your own pocket. So, for example, our firm represents people on a contingency fee basis. We only get paid if we collect money damages for you. And we also advance the cost to develop your case. So you come up with zero money.
So, yeah, and it's not your job as a client or an injured person to figure out if this is a good case or not, because that's, you're not knowledgeable. But you can contact the personal injury lawyer at that time, and it won't cost you anything if they say, no, this is not a good idea.
So one of the other cases that I'll tell you about had a very, very significant impact upon me. And years ago, I represented the estate of I think she was 3-year-old girl. And her father was a contractor, was going off to work, and had one of those dump trucks where there are 4 tires in the back, so 2 tires on each side in the back. And unbeknownst to him, this daughter runs behind his vehicle, and he runs her over and kills her.
Oh, my God.
And one of my daughters was a year older, and one of my daughters was a year younger. And I just remember thinking to myself, if there's a hell, he's living it every single day. And I don't know how you go on from something like that. Losing a child, and I see this way too much in what I do, is the penultimate. I mean, I don't know that there could be anything worse than losing a child, but losing a child and then blaming yourself perhaps for the loss of this child is something that is just so incredibly painful.
Yeah, when I lost my wife, everybody said to me, unfortunately spouses die, but what's not supposed to happen is your children shouldn't die. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't and that stuck with me. And I don't think people ever get over that.
We wanted to take a quick break to remind you about our sponsor, findagreatattorney.com. Dealing with the aftermath of an accident or injury can be overwhelming. And the last thing you want to worry about is finding the right lawyer. Findagreatattorney.com simplifies the process by connecting you with one of the top attorneys in your area who specializes in your specific type of case. Whether you've been injured in a car accident, suffered a slip and fall, or experienced medical malpractice, findagreatattorney.com has a network of experienced lawyers ready to help. And remember, their service is completely free, so you can focus on your recovery without worrying about the cost of legal representation. If you or someone you know needs legal assistance, don't hesitate to visit findagreatattorney.com and let them match you with one of the best lawyers in your area for your needs. And I know, unfortunately, too many people who have lost a child, and that just creates a hole in your heart that never goes away.
Yeah.
And you think about that all the time.
So how did you do this or work through this or help this person?
So I had a paralegal in my office who said to me, who was working on the file, she said, you can fire me, but I just can't work on this file. Mm. It was a very, very, very difficult case. And we were able to get a good resolution for the estate. But, that's one of the things that we do is we deal with cases that are absolutely horrible. And I had another case where I was literally brought to tears, and it involved a teenage girl who was involved in a motor vehicle accident, and very vibrant, very attractive, very active, and she became a quadriplegic.
Oh my God.
I met with her and the family, and I went out to my car after I met with her, and I just cried. And I thought, it's almost like a living wake where you have your child who is alive but isn't really alive, and that they're trapped inside their own body. And the pain that you must experience as a parent of this child is just incredible. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh my God.
Yeah. Be thankful for what we have.
And when you deal with this on a regular basis, it makes you even more thankful. And I had a friend years ago, and he found out he had cancer, and he went through chemotherapy and he lost all of his hair. And he said, I get a big kick out of people that say, oh, I'm having a bad hair day. He said, I wish I had hair to have a bad hair day. And so many of us, dwell on the things that are not important, and there was that book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And when you deal with death and misery and pain and suffering on a daily basis, it makes me, at least, that much more grateful for what I have and my family and the gifts and experiences that I have.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about the difference between personal injury cases and workman's comp?
Certainly. So a personal injury case involves, and most personal injury cases that we handle involve motor vehicle accidents, whether it's car, truck, motorcycle, bus, Uber, Lyft, something like that, trip and fall, slip and fall, dog bite cases, and then we review and refer out medical malpractice cases. So if you're injured at work, that would be a workers' compensation case. Now, sometimes you're working. So, for example, if you're a salesperson and you're driving from point A to point B, and then somebody hits you from behind and injures you, that'll be a hybrid type case. That is, you'll have a workers' compensation claim because you were working at the time, but you'll also have a third-party claim against the person that caused your accident. And there are complications that go along with this. And the information that I'm giving today has to deal with Connecticut law, so I don't know what they do in other states. But a personal injury case would be against somebody who does something they're not supposed to do or does something that they're supposed to do, and they create damages and injure somebody else as a result of a breach of a duty that they have to this person, and those damages are causally related to the problems that they're experiencing.
So do different insurance companies fight about it? They one's the workman's comp is a different insurance company than the personal.
So we don't handle workers' comp cases. We handle the personal injury side, but there are similar, the same insurance companies represent in certain cases plaintiff's personal injury and the plaintiff's workers' comp cases. Other ones, they have specialized workers' comp carriers that handle those cases.
So you would have maybe two lawyers or three lawyers?
We refer out the workers' comp cases, but many times we can work through these things without the need for hiring a workers' comp lawyer, depending upon the type of case that it is.
And what about the medical malpractice? That's an injury too, but it's different?
It's a different type of case. And in Connecticut, you have to have a certificate of good faith, which means that you get the file and then you refer it to a doctor in the same area of specialization, and that doctor reviews the file and then says whether or not the other doctor breached the standard of care. And those are buzzwords for committed malpractice. So, we have firms that we use, we refer these clients to, and then they get the records together and send them out for an expert opinion review.
So does the expert opinion ever say that it's not medical malpractice?
Oh, certainly.
And what about the slips and fall? That's what you do also?
So we handle slip and fall and trip and fall cases. And when we have those types of cases, we have a premises liability expert that we contact. We have the premises liability expert go out to the site where the person slipped or tripped, and they take pictures, they take measurements, and they look at the codes, and they find out what defects there were that caused this person to slip or trip, and we base the case on that expert's report.
Now, have you ever were involved in a case that became a precedent?
So the answer is yes. Years ago, we had a client who was sued in a horrible case where the person was home, I think, on winter break and was hit by a drunk driver. And they claimed that our client overserved the person that caused the accident. And as a result of this case, it's called a dram shop case that has to do with the overservice of liquor to
What's
somebody.
dram mean?
Dram is, I think it's Old English. It's probably a amount of alcohol, like 1 dram. But a dram shop case refers to people that serve alcohol, and if they're overserved and they go out and they injure somebody, that would be a dram shop case. But as a result of this case, the dram shop limit was increased to $250,000 as a result of this particular type of case.
Oh. Do they ever go to jail, these dram cases?
Well, that's so there's the civil part and there's the criminal part. And the answer is yes. Many times these offending individuals do go to jail.
Really? Mm-hmm. And what about, is there any case that you're proud, like you beat the insurance company or that kind of thing?
People think that, so you're injured in an accident, you almost immediately get a call from the other person's insurance company, the person that caused your accident. They're like, oh, I want to help you, resolve your case. I want to get you money for your lost wages. I want to pay your medical bills. I want to make sure that you're made whole. So I want to get some information from you. And what we tell people is you should never speak to the other insurance company. And they try to get you to settle your case right away for pennies on the dollar. So, there's an Insurance Institute study that found that people that are represented by lawyers end up with more money after they pay legal fees than do people that represent themselves. And I think the number at the time I last saw it was 3 times.
Wow.
So you'll get 3 times the amount of money if you have a competent lawyer represent you rather than, going it on your own.
Even after you pay the lawyer's fees?
Yes.
Wow.
So it's fighting with insurance companies all the time. I mean, there are cases where insurance companies tell the client, oh, there's no liability, we're not going to pay you. Or, you weren't really that injured or we're not going to pay you. Or you had a pre-existing injury, so we're not going to pay you. I mean, they do all kinds of things to try to get, the injured party to accept a lesser amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, you really need in these cases, you really need an advocate because, you need an expert and you got to trust your experts because we don't know what we're talking about, talking to insurance companies. We're just going to say yes. Mm-hmm. And that's the wrong thing to do.
And it just reminds me, I mean, we had a case one time where a woman who was an immigrant was working kind of as a part-time subcontractor for this woman who was doing landscaping. And the woman who owned the company picks up our client, brings her over to this house, and she's working at the house. And there's this porch, there's this kind of door that opens up to underneath the porch, and our client's down there working, and this thing drops down on top of her head and compresses her spine. She's in horrible pain. She's in horrific agony. And this person that was employing her takes her home, doesn't take her to the hospital. And our client is saying, I have to go to the hospital. I have to go to the hospital. It's almost like that Stephen King book, Misery, where she doesn't want to let her out of the house. She had to call and get somebody to pick her up and take her to the hospital. And she had a very significant spinal fracture. And then the insurance company wants to say, well, it's not our fault. It's the fault of the employer who didn't take her to the hospital. And, then things don't flow from that. And again, we got her a significant amount of money, but it's the tactics that insurance companies use to try and pay injured parties less money for their injuries.
Yeah, 3 times you get. That's a big number.
Mm-hmm.
3 times, even after your costs.
Right.
Yeah. So you want to talk about something that I'm always afraid of is dog bites. Can you talk about some dog bite cases?
We have represented lots of people in dog bite cases. And I had a nationwide service that reviewed dog bite cases across the country and referred them out to some of the best lawyers across the country. And, some of the more significant cases involve people. We had one client who was at a dog park, and she's walking her dog, and the other dog is off leash, and there's a fight between the two dogs. So she goes to grab her dog, and the other dog bites her finger off. I mean, severs her finger, and I don't know what happens with the finger, but it can't be reattached. And the insurance company, so in Connecticut, we have strict liability in dog bite cases, which means unless you're teasing, tormenting, trespassing, or doing some other tort, you automatically are entitled to money damages. You've shown that there is liability. So you don't have to show that you knew your dog was dangerous. You don't have to show that you knew that the dog bit somebody before. All you have to show in Connecticut is that you were bitten and you weren't, you didn't have an exception that applies in this situation. We had another case out of state that we reviewed that involved somebody working at Petco. And this individual was grooming a dog, and then the dog literally bit off the person's nose.
No. Ooh.
And then the person had the nose reattached, but the skin became necrotic. So the nose was black. And then we've had, which doesn't seem fair to the owner of the dog. We had a case where there was a 7-year-old boy playing in his parents' yard, playing catch with a friend. The ball goes into the neighbor's yard. The neighbor has signs, dangerous dog, do not trespass. The 7-year-old goes into the neighbor's dog and is attacked by this dog. And there's an exception in certain cases for children. And we were able to get a significant amount of money for this child that was attacked by a dog, despite the fact that there are signs and warnings saying, don't come here, dangerous dog, don't trespass. Mm-hmm. And again, that's another reason why it's important if somebody's been injured to contact an experienced personal injury lawyer. Because if you don't now know something like that, you would just say, little Johnny went onto the neighbor's property and said, don't trespass and beware of dogs. So what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, so once again, disclaimers are not always protective of or prevent you from getting money.
Exactly. And then the other difficult dog bite cases are cases where, you have a family member at another family member's home and then they're attacked by a dog because it creates a rift within the family. You're filing a claim not so much against the family member, but against the family member's homeowner's insurance carrier. Right. But, those cases are a little tricky because it creates different dynamics with the family. We had another case where the daughter is driving the mother to the store and there are a number of people in the car. So the mother is getting into the back seat of the vehicle. The daughter thinks that the mother is in the vehicle completely. The daughter then takes off. The mother falls out of the car and is significantly injured. And then the other case, which was just incredible, is that a husband and wife are going to the beach. The husband pulls up to the beach. The wife gets out to get some things out of the back of the car. The husband thinks that the wife has gotten everything out of the back of the car and has moved away from the vehicle, puts the car in reverse, and runs her over. So, and this is a couple that stayed together after the incident, and it's just a very, very difficult case in the dynamics of, the husband and wife and what that does.
Yeah, so you would say that the wife is really not suing the husband, is really suing the insurance company. Does that
not
help?
Even suing is filing a claim against the other insurance company, yes.
Does that help sometimes and mitigate the inter-family situation?
It does, but I think the real problem is one of guilt. Oh. So if you have a dog at your house and your nephew comes over or your grandson comes over and then your grandson is bitten, you'll want to justify like, oh, he was trying to hit the dog or he's trying to or he stepped on the dog's tail you try to justify why it wasn't your fault, and it creates this weird kind of dynamic.
Mm-hmm. And what is your most unusual case?
We currently have a case that I think if you were to interview lawyers across the country, you wouldn't find I don't know, 50 lawyers that have this type of a case. And the case is called loss of sepulcher.
English, please.
Well, I'll explain what that means. But a loss of sepulcher case, in this particular case, the family member's mother died. She died of cancer. The body was picked up by the funeral home, taken to the funeral home, and then they were having the wake and they were having the funeral through this funeral home. They go to the wake, and their mother's face is sunken in. Oh. She has blood coming out of her nose. Mm. She has a maggot crawling out of her ear. These are all the allegations of what happened, and that her body smells of decomposing flesh. And the claim is that the funeral home didn't properly treat the body. So this creates a case called loss of sepulcher. And it's a very, very difficult case. And I've heard of another case where somebody's mother died. She was taken to the funeral home. And the night before the wake, the funeral home burned down. And the body was burned so that there was just the bones. There was no body. So it's almost like you lose a family member, which is bad enough. And then there's this separate type of loss that adds to the amount of grief that you're experiencing because of what happened.
What does sepulcher mean?
Sepulcher has to do with the body. So the Holy Sepulchre in the Catholic faith has to do with, the body.
Body. Mm-hmm. Loss of the body.
And that's what I believe it means in Latin.
Right.
One of the things I'd like to talk about is how this is such a rewarding occupation. And I mean, like what you do or what you did is that you have people come in with problems, with situations they can't handle on their own. They're frightened. They're afraid. They're anxious. They don't know what to do. And they need somebody to guide them through this process. Mm-hmm. And what you did and what I'm able to do is give people hope. And what we do is we tell people, all you need to do is get better. You concentrate on getting better. We'll handle everything else. So it's rewarding in that you take somebody that's scared, that's hurt, that's injured, that doesn't know what to do, and you guide them through the process, and hopefully you get them a significant amount of money for their injury, so you're literally changing their life. And it just is a very rewarding situation. I mean, we had one case, in fact, we had an episode with her on the podcast where she was going to the gym, wonderful, wonderful lady, was going to the gym early in the morning and was hit by a young man doing 95 miles an hour head on who wanted to kill himself. And what we had to go through, the different things that we had to do in that case were unbelievable given the fact that the insurance company was taking the position that this kid, number one, shouldn't have been driving. There was no insurance. There was, they go through all these different, things to try not to pay people money. So it's just rewarding for us. And the other thing is, if you try to represent yourself, chances are you're going to be taken advantage of. Chances are the insurance company is going to try to pay you pennies on the dollar. And, I've had many people contact me and they say, they were injured in an accident 3 weeks ago. Oh, the insurance company called me. They want to pay my medical bills and they want to give me $1,000 on top of that. And I say to them, well, what are your injuries? Are they going to be permanent? Are you going to get better? What are your total medical bills going to be? How is this going to affect you? I don't know. So how can you possibly, resolve your case? And I have people call me, and one of the first questions, when somebody's been injured in an accident, they call me on the telephone, I'll ask them questions about their case, and I'll ask them, do they have any questions I can answer? One of the first questions they have, quite naturally, is, what's the value of my case? And I say to them, I will answer this question after you answer this. I have a question for you, and I'll answer your question right after that. And they say, of course. And this is on the phone, of course, and it's not through, FaceTime or Skype or something. And I say to them, how do you like my tie? And there'll be a pause, and I'll hear, well, I don't know. I can't see your tie. And I said, it's the same thing with your personal injury case. I can't see how long you're going to treat. I can't see what your loss of income is going to be, what your medical bills are going to pay, what type of liens you're going to have against your file, how much pain you're going to have, how much you're going to suffer, what type of permanent disability rating you have, and how this affects you for the rest of your life. So I can't possibly tell you what your case is worth right now, which is why insurance companies try to settle cases with injured parties right away. They want to cut them a check for a nominal amount of money and then be done with it and move on to the next case. So it's interesting in that I get to protect people. I get to help people. I get to give people hope. And for me, there's no greater calling in what I can do to do those things.
Yeah, especially because nowadays insurance companies don't provide everything, and there's a lot of personal costs that they have to pay, co-pays and all this stuff. So having extra money during your rehabilitation is very important.
You know, the other thing that's interesting is you see more and more, you have these ads online, and they'll say, find out what your case is worth. And, give us some brief information, we'll tell you what your case is worth. Well, that's impossible. So they'll ask questions like, what kind of an accident was it? Rear end collision. Did you go to the hospital? Yes. Was it caused by the fault of another? Yes. Did you incur medical bills? Yes. Do you have a lawyer? No. And then you push a button and they're supposed to tell you what your case value is. But
really?
That's what they say.
Right.
But what they're doing is they're having you input this information. So they say, oh, you qualify for money damages. We're going to have a lawyer contact you. And I fill these out to have a lawyer contact me. And I say, I filled out that information and I want to know what my case value is. Because you said online, if I give you this information, you'll tell me what the case value is. Well, that's difficult to say. We'd have to get your medical records. We'll have to sign you up as a client. I'd say, wait. You said you would tell me what my case is worth. What is my case worth? Well, I said, why are you advertising you're going to tell me what my case is worth when you're not? And this is all part of the process. And now people think, oh, with AI, you're going to be able to say what your case is worth. And these are like little gimmicks and tricks and different things that people want to tell you. But it's about experience. It's about, what types of cases you've handled, what the value of the case is, what the pain is, what the suffering is, what the medical bills are, what the lost wages are, what the future stuff is going to be. So it's a complicated process.
Yeah, and very important process.
Very important. And the difference between hiring the right lawyer and hiring the wrong lawyer could result in a significant difference in the amount of money you recover.
Right.
And then the other thing I'm asked by people is, listen, I was injured in Atlanta. I was injured in Philadelphia. I was injured in Oklahoma City. I was injured in Colorado Springs. Can you help me? And I've been doing this for over 40 years. So I have a network of lawyers throughout the United States who are independently rated, talking about these rating companies, independently rated as among being the very best at what they do. So if they're injured in another state, they can contact me, and then I can go about getting the necessary information, finding a lawyer in their area, and then finding them one of the best lawyers, again, that will handle their case on a contingency fee basis so they don't have to come up with any money out of their own pocket.
Do you have a website or something that they can contact?
So our website is, the name of the firm is Hastings, Cohan & Walsh. So it's www.hcwlaw.com. And they can contact me through the website. They can provide me with any information that they need, or they can just email me directly at R, as in Richard Hastings, Hastings, at hcwlaw.com. And I'd be happy to, give them advice, to point them in the right direction, or to find a lawyer out of state for them.
Isn't there also something, find my own lawyer or something?
So findagreatattorney.com. So that's a separate service I have that assists people in finding them one of the best lawyers for their personal injury or medical malpractice case, regardless of where that happened.
So it can be in any state in the United States?
Anywhere.
How about internationally?
I've helped people before. It's funny, different states have different laws, of course. In this country, different countries have very, very different laws. In certain areas, certain countries, you have to pay the personal injury lawyer. So whether it's hourly or whether it's, a different way. But, I go about doing this because, the more I help people, it's like, it just comes back to you. So I'm happy to help people. I'm happy to point them in the right direction. I'm happy to listen to their story. I'm happy to tell them what I think or what they should be doing.
Well, contingency basis is also helpful for people that don't have a lot of money.
I don't know that this system could exist if it were not for contingency fee cases, because most people don't have a lot of money to pay a lawyer, especially if you've been injured. You lose your job, or you don't have any income, or you have mounting medical bills. How are you going to pay a lawyer if you're going through this? So a contingency agreement allows people, regardless of their financial situation, to hire one of the best lawyers in their area.
That's amazing. Well, thank you very much. Today was really interesting.
Well, thank you.
I never really thought of all this stuff that you do. It's very helpful.
Thanks so much.
And rewarding, I guess.
It is.